I'm often asked what we can do with point cloud data, or why we should even bother scanning when we can do things more quickly the traditional method using total stations, robotics, or GPS. I'm going to take a simple example of a parking lot here. This was done with a single position here. Obviously there are multiple parking lots, but each one was done with a single scan position. Now we can come into these scans and do pick points and then create line work based on those pick points. We could do it with the curves, with the buildings, with whichever features we want, simply picking and tell it to create a polyline between those segments. Now we also have features such as fit edge, which is found in Cyclone, that allows me to establish a reference plane and then from that create a template fitting the template along that edge. So what I'm going to do is simply do 2 points, a face, a curve, a top, a curve, and then I'm going to tell it to draw this line as well as this one, and then I'll tell it to fit along the point cloud that it finds. We could make adjustments to what we see. I'm simply going to tell it to create what's there, and now we can see a 3D break line placed in the point cloud based on the information that was there. Now, one of the things I tell people all the time, the scanner isn't a replacement for your traditional methodology. It's an enhancement. So if we take this parking lot, for example, we could have mapped all of the key features using robot, total station, or GPS, set the scanner up in one location, and simply told it to scan. Now, what would we do that for? What would be the advantage? The big advantage here would be all of these intermediate points that should be collected. What I'm going to do is pick a point in my cloud towards the center of the parking lot. And what I'm going to do is from the Tools menu in Cyclone, I'm going to create points on a grid. Now notice I didn't do any cleanup. There are vehicles in this parking lot, there are light poles, there are shrubberies and trees. I didn't do any cleanup to this. I'm simply picking a point and telling it to place this reference plane in the parking lot. I can adjust the rotation of the points if I choose, and I can adjust the point spacing. So I'm going to go every 10 feet. And obviously if you're topoing this parking lot, you're not going to be taking topo shots every 10 feet. So we're able to get more using the scanner in less time than we would traditionally be able to do. I'm going to create points on the grid starting at 5,000. I don't want the closest, the highest, or the lowest. I want the ground point looking within about a 1.5 foot search radius, and we're going to create a code on those called ground shot. I'm going to go to a top-down view and switch to an orthographic projection to make sure I'm looking at this the way I want to see it, and then I'll place a fence around the area. Now I'm going to pick a little bit more just to really show how this command works. Once everything's established, I'll tell it to place points. I'll get an error that tells me it's going to create a lot of data, and yes, I wish to continue. Okay, the points were created, so I'll click close and wait for the command to close and the points to be placed. Now the points have been drawn. I'll turn down the number of points we see, and now we can see all of those 10-foot spots placed. If we look under the vehicle here, for example, the ground is what was picked, not the vehicle. When we come over to the island, the tree was ignored. Same thing here. Okay, so those ground positions were picked. Now obviously if my grass is 2 or 3 feet tall, I'm not going to get the best possible ground here, so I would ignore those areas. But for low grass like this, I should be pretty darn close to that ground position. Okay, so now what do I have out of all of this that I've created? If I turn off my point cloud, I can see the break lines that I created, as well as all of these points. I'll select everything in the drawing. From the File menu, I'll say Export. I'll take this as an AutoCAD DXF file, doing everything that's selected and visible, and I'll export. 6,000 objects were exported. I can now open this file in a program such as Civil 3D, Carlson Survey, whichever surveying or engineering software I use, and all of that 3D data comes over. There are my 3D break lines and my 3D points. So now I can use the functions within that command to create my surface model, as well as my contouring. So there are my contours. If I go to the surface viewer, I can get a view of that 3D ground. Obviously I need more break lines and a little bit more work on this, but relatively quickly I'm able to come in and create that ground surface. That was one scan position, one medium resolution scan, and image, which should take me about 15 minutes with a Leica C10 scanner. One position, one scan, this job is finished.